Thank you. I'm Darrick Moe, the manager at the Statewide Association for the Rural Electric Co-ops. There are 50 of them across the state, and with rural electric co-ops, you get the benefit of having the directors that govern the co-op and the management team at the co-op shop in your local community and see you each day, as well as the principle of cooperation among cooperatives. And that's kind of what the role is for MREA is. As a statewide association, we work with our 50 members and try to embody that and help the co-ops around the state cooperate and do things together when they can do that more effectively than doing it individually. We've heard great presentations here today, and I'd like to just emphasize before I turn it over to questions, and appreciate those that have sent in some questions for the panel. We are going to have some time to do that as soon as I make a couple of broad comments here, and welcome those that may be thinking about questions to queue those up, and because we will have some time yet here before the bottom of the hour. Of course, we wanted you all to be here in person to hear from you and answer questions, but looking forward to trying to deal with your questions over the live chat. So please do weigh in with those, and we'll take some time to try to address those. I would just say that in my view, Minnesota's rural electric co-ops are leaders in the energy transition that's going on across our state, across the country, really across the globe. That grid is becoming cleaner and greener rapidly. We've heard the perspective for Great River Energy and for Lake Region here about how that's definitely true in this case locally here. It's true for Minnesota's co-ops in general. And we're doing that in a way that balances also the key of reliability on a winter day like this, and any day of the year really. It's vitally important that we're able to get the lights to turn on and the heat to turn on every time that we need them, as well as almost every other vital service that our economy depends on. John mentioned the word resiliency, being able to get the power back when we do have a problem, and reliability, making sure that it's always there. And affordability. Tim talked about the projection for no rate increase this year for Lake Region and the success they've had with affordability. The total energy sector increase for prices in the last 12 months across the country is 30%. We've seen other electric providers in this state file for significant rate increases. The rural electric co-ops across the state are a bastion of stability when it comes to the rates, and that's also something that's very important to us and to our members. And I think Lake Region, again, is an excellent example of what you're seeing from co-ops in general across the state. So keeping all of those things in balance and doing that in a way where we hear from folks in our communities and try to keep those things in balance in a responsive way to those that we serve in our communities is really what co-ops are all about, and the kind of message and things we wanted to talk about here during today's forum. And so again, I just really appreciate everybody logging in and the panel and the group for taking the time, and look forward to trying to address some questions. So hoping that people will ring in with some more questions here because we're all wanting to stay as long as we can and not go out in the weather. So please do bring us some more questions. But I will get us started here with the first couple that I'm seeing, and I'm told people online can see all the questions, so I'm not necessarily going to repeat them all, but there's a couple of questions up front that were definitely for John Brecky about dual fuel CTs and carbon capture and sequestration. Those questions are, and I'm going to ask John if he could start by responding to those.
Okay. Derrick, did you go to me for the question? You just give me the thumbs up because I can't hear you. Okay, great. So this is John Brecky. I've got a couple of questions here that came in during this great conversation that we've had today. So the first one was related to the oil that we use at the dual fuel combustion turbines, and is that oil bio-derived fuel? And today it's not. It's certainly something that's on our radar screen for the future. Now, we don't burn much oil at these power plants, but we would love to be able to burn bio-derived fuel, and it is something that's on our minds. It's not in the immediate plan, but eventually we would like to get there. But today we're not there. The next question was, does carbon capture and sequestration also capture other emissions such as nitrous oxides, sulfur dioxide, and mercury? And the answer to that question is basically no. This is an amine capture-based system, and the amines in the solution bind to the carbon dioxide molecules themselves. So it directly controls and captures CO2. It does not have an impact on the other pollutants from a power plant. But those other pollutants are governed by other measures. And so the EPA has responsibility and a mandate and directive to control power plant emissions in this country, and they'll continue to regulate Coal Creek Station in that regard. Our dry finding system, though, does reduce those emissions, and that dry finding system will remain in use at Coal Creek. The dry finding system is patented technology that GRE engineers developed. It uses waste heat from the power plant to dry the coal before it's burned, and the air jigs that make up the drying process actually sift through the coal, and some of the heavier parts of the coal drop out, and we landfill those. Those heavier parts of the coal tend to contain more mercury, for example. It also helps us reduce our SO2 emissions by having a more efficient power plant with less water vapor to deal with in the exhaust gases. So thank you for the questions. I'll turn it back to Darrick. I'm still unable to hear, so I'll mute myself and I'll watch the chat, and Dylan can let me know if I need to answer another question. Thank you.
Thank you, John, even though you can't hear me, but appreciate that. We are doing the best we can to patch this through, and it's really going quite well for a virtual event put together in my mind. But thank you, John. The next question I thought we'd kind of throw open to the panel, because it's an important big picture question for the industry in general, and I think be interesting to hear from a variety of perspectives on it. Certainly the penetration of wind going up in the portfolio at Great River Energy and Lake Region is something that we've covered. And so Harold asked, are we getting too dependent on wind and associated risks? And so maybe I'll give folks on the panel a chance to kind of weigh in on that in general. And Mike, could I start by hearing from you on that?
You bet. I was, in my time, as I mentioned, with Xcel Energy, I was a resource planner for Xcel, looking at their portfolio and thinking about how we were going to continue the clean energy transition that the state and the region is on. My sense is that we've studied, as a state, studied this, the increasing rates of variable intermittent resources on the system and what levels we start to run into trouble with. So we have a pretty good grasp on that. I will say, so on the one hand, I think we have a good understanding, and MISO, the Midwest Independent System Operator, which John referred to, is sort of a big battery for the region and helps maintain reliability for the system. As power goes out in one area, there's some opportunity to shift resources to that area from other parts of the region. The other, though, I think there is a point at which we're taking a lot of capacity off the system in the Midwest as coal plants are being retired. And it is something we have to be our resource planners have to be really focused on making sure that we have the capacity, the firm dispatchable resources to meet the needs as they come up. So it's, I guess, Harold, I'd say that it's something we have a really decent handle on, both on the science of it and the physics, but also it is something we need to continue to keep our eye on. It's really important. I think John can't hear me, but he emphasized the importance of their natural gas peaking facilities to maintaining the needed capacity for their system. Those plants don't run very often. There's not very much fuel going into those plants being consumed. There's not much CO2 coming out of those plants, but they're absolutely necessary as an anchor for their system. So it's a great question, Harold. I appreciate you asking it.
Yeah, am I on? Yeah, thank you very much, Harold, for that great question. One thing that comes to mind right away for me is I wanted to talk about on this reliability question is the co-op model. Reliability is king, as I say it. If the lights aren't on, we at Lake Region are the ones that have to deal with that. We've seen what's happened across the country in recent years, and I can assure you, and as I'm speaking for our board of directors, every decision that's made at Lake Region, at GRE, there's a very robust discussion in the boardroom about it. Everybody's focused on reliability. We absolutely have to have reliability. The transition that Great River Energy is going through, we have a board member in the co-op model of Lake Region, Mike Brazel. I think Mike is on the line, perhaps. He sits on the Great River Energy Board of Directors asking these same type of questions, Harold. So very dialed in, of course, on reliability. And I think one of the things we really like about the plan that John Brecky walked us through was we kind of have this little slower transition, if you will, over the next 10 years with Rainbow versus a decision if that plant would have been shut down.
To share any thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you. And this is John Brecky again. I'll just weigh in for a second on this question as well, because I think there's a related question about the fact that we have 1,600 megawatts of wind, and Bill points out that at 25% capacity factor, that's a small fraction of the energy output that Coal Creek has. So are we really replacing it? And the first thing I'd say about this is our capacity factors on wind are quite a bit higher than 25%. We're looking at 40% or more fleet-wide capacity factor on our wind additions. The second thing I'd say about this is 1,600 megawatts of wind, that bumps up against what we can actually use to serve our own load, our own needs. Additional wind beyond about 1,600 megawatts, we would largely be serving the market with it. We'd be selling more into the market as surplus wind generation than we would be using it for our own needs to serve our member cooperative systems. And so that's kind of the sweet spot for us, where it hedges our energy need, but it also matches our load better. And if we went to 2,000 megawatts, we'd be largely just serving the market with that, and that's not something we're interested in doing. So what this means then is that sometimes that when it's not windy and the loads are high, we're going to need other sources. So that's where the 328 megawatt purchase from Rainbow comes in. It helps fill in for that. But we're also going to need to place some natural gas hedges and some power hedges in the future. So there will be other purchases that we make to round out our hedge position during those times. But from a reliability standpoint, we have our combustion turbines, and those can be activated to meet those conditions as well. Thank you.
Dan, I'll ask you if you could comment on that too. And there's another question that I'll kind of read and see if you want to provide your thoughts on both of them. In addition to this big picture wind question, how big a role do you expect battery storage to play and distributed consumer storage in the future? That would be another one that'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on too.
Well, on the first note, wind is an important part of the system, and like Mike alluded to, we have a pretty good handle on how much we can penetrate before we run into technical issues. But I think we have to pay attention to where and how much we put in at any one given point, because of the fact that if the wind is screaming in one spot where there's a ton of wind turbines and the load is low where the consumers are, it can be a bit of a problem. But I don't think if our goal is carbon-free, carbon neutral as we move out in time, we need to do as much as we can. But we just have to be cognizant of the fact that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And that's in my experience. In my early days, I worked a lot with the Europeans in the early development of wind, and they use a really nice model in how they kind of spread their eggs out on the wind and spread it amongst the communities, and that's kind of the one I've always followed. So I'm a little bit prejudiced there. But as far as battery storage goes, I think it's going to play a very important role in the future because it allows us some flexibility and also grid resiliency. like I alluded to a little bit a while ago, in the hybrids that we're looking at doing, the communities, we're looking at sprinkling storage within the community, not so much just for the capacity value of the storage, but also to add resiliency to us rural Americans who live out on the end of the wire. Because there's a lot of wire between where the power's coming from, the bulk of the power's coming from, and where we actually use it, and a lot of things can happen. So I think storage is not only going to be an important part of the capacity values, but also resiliency.
Thank you. Tim, we had a question come in about making this available as a recording to folks that weren't able. Could you field that one for us?
Yes. Yeah, we are recording this, and we will make that available. I'm sure it'll be on our website. Love to share that out there as much as we can. Thanks for the question.
And then we had a question come in about advocating for all sources of energy, including nuclear. That's very related to the work that Mike Bull does for all co-ops in Minnesota, so I'll let you speak to that, Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Derrick. Yeah, there's a number of legislators in St. Paul, as well as the governor, has been pushing for legislation that we would require all electric supply be renewable by 2040. And we're not supportive of that kind of approach. I think all of our electric supply providers, Great River Energy, Minn Kota, Dairyland Power, East River, they're all moving to an increasingly clean system, but they're doing it at the pace that makes sense to them, using the technologies and fuel sources that make sense to them, so that their impacts on their customers, they maintain a reliable and affordable system as it becomes increasingly clean. And so the approach really is an all of the above, but increasingly clean advocacy at the Capitol, including nuclear. We have I didn't realize when I just joined MRAA back in October, and as I was looking through our organization's resolutions, where our policy is embedded, there is a resolution specifically in support of nuclear energy and maintaining the existing nuclear fleet in particular. Those are the backbone, in addition to all the wind that we're adding and solar that we're adding to the portfolios across the region. Our existing nuclear fleet are really important as carbon-free resources. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the questions that come in. I know we're pretty close to time, and I wanted to give Tim, as our host, an opportunity to share any final thoughts.
Sure, yes. Again, just want to thank the members for dialing in this afternoon. Would have loved to have been in the same room with you, but that's the way it goes with this weather situation. Would encourage you to continue to stay engaged with us as we work through this transition. It's incredibly important. We want to absolutely work with our members on these new technologies and things and advance the co-op forward. It's a really exciting time for us. Maybe just a closing thought, and this is kind of today is a pretty good example what an electric cooperative is all about, not only having an energy forum, but the day-to-day operation at Lake Region. We certainly had hoped to have this meeting in person. We had to pivot this morning and make the decision in the spirit of safety for our membership to not do it in person, obviously. Our technology team did an incredible job to get this in place for us. Our employees here, as best of my knowledge, everybody's home safe today. There's a skeleton crew in the room here still. And we had a couple power outages today. And our guys went out, made those repairs, and they're home safe too now, as far as I know. Again, that's what it's like here at Lake Region, and as members, I know you appreciate that. So we want to keep those lights on for you, and let's build our energy future together. So thanks so much. Appreciate it.